starts the car. That one starts the car. All right. It was. We thought he was like from another planet, you know. And if you looked at some of these guys, especially the Polish guys, Kowalski, Johnny Valentine, Gene Kaniski, these guys were, you know, in between 6'4" and 6'8". Baron Cicluna, Swede Hansen, and when they would, you know, I'm just naming some people in there that I wrestled too, and when they hit you, they hit you. I mean, they clobbered you good. They weren't gonna take a chance that some young guy was gonna make them look lousy. So think of the logic. It was a lot better just to smack the kid. All right. Well, anyway, so you're talking about becoming a wrestler and stuff like that. Well, I was in high school, and you know, in order to go to college and all that, you're supposed to take a foreign language. So, you know, pass it anyways. I took Spanish and French, and wouldn't you know it, I pretty much flunked them both. I think my French teacher gave me a D- or something because she lived in our neighborhood. And so that was lucky. And, you know, don't ever think when they teach you, if you're a kid, don't ever think when they teach you something that it's useless. Because to me, I was like, I'm not going to need this French and Spanish for anything. Well, guess what my first bookings were? Quebec, and then all of a sudden Mexico. So if I'd have paid attention in school, I'd have had some French and some Spanish. You know, I would have learned it. But the funny thing was, even though I got the crummy grades, I learned a whole bunch of it. I retained it or whatever, you know. And so I kind of had to figure that stuff out when, you know, that was different. Well, I don't know, being a kid and wanting to get involved in something like that, it was considered a quirky lifestyle, you know. It was more looked at more like the circus or the, you know, the circus or carnivals and traveling shows. And of course, my mother's family had a background in that, and so you know, hear all the stories and such growing up, and that was always interesting. And you know, that's like the gypsies. That's like the gypsy side. And so eventually, you know, I left home. I guess, I don't know, 18 years old, and did this and that, went to this place, that place, whatever, and you know, had wrestling matches. I was having a great time. I couldn't believe they were paying me for that. You know, when I started off, I was getting knocked off by some of the biggest stars in wrestling for their TV shows or whatever. And then, you know, eventually it became my turn, I guess. They figured I was good enough, and they came to me one night and said, "What's your finish? What's your finish move?" I said, "I don't have a finish move, I lose." So I had to come up with something. And that was pretty funny because, you know, everybody knows each other. You're traveling with a small bunch of people, and they think you're in people, fans and such. They think you're in big arenas every night, basking in all kinds of money and this and that. And here we are driving around with 3-4 guys in a car, you know, splitting the gas half the time because the promoter's so cheap. And then we pull up to the hall that we're going to be in, and maybe it's, you know, in Canada they had ice arenas everywhere, so you'd always be like in some ice arena or whatever. But you do your share of like fraternal clubs, you know, like the Eagles Hall and the Elks Hall and the Moose. I guess anything that crawls around, they make some kind of fraternal order of it or whatever. You know, and a lot of times, you know, one guy, they'll get one hotel room, or one motel room. Usually a motel is, you know, a motor hotel. You drive up, you get your own little parking spot. You walk in the door from the outside, and then, of course, a hotel, the doors are all, you know, it's built up, and the doors are all inside. So we were more of a motel crowd than we were a hotel crowd. But you know, it comes with change. But when people see you on television every week, they think they know you. And gosh, I was on television every week for, you know, you think of you know, TV shows that you watch for 5 years or whatever, and I was on there for a lot more than 5 years. I was on TV, and you know, being as dastardly as I was, or whatever you want to call it, it made for awkward situations. You know, mostly with teenage kids or whatever. They try to show their manhood or something while you're going to buy yourself a can of Coke and a pack of cigarettes. You know, I mean, let's face it. I mean, the era that I was in, we weren't all these muscled up little guys like they got today. Like today, you look at them and they got these guys. They're all in tip-top shape, and they're all small. A lot of them are around 200 pounds. And they do all this high-flying, fantastic stuff. That's what people want to see. You know, because they turned around and they said it wasn't real. And people say, well, it's fake. It wasn't real, but it's real. I mean, it's just it's real because it's there. You know, you're out there, and you know, you're driving from one place to another, and you're wrestling 300 days, at least 300 days a year. Maybe 350. Who knows? You know, and sometimes the pay is good, sometimes the pay is bad, sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's really bad, depending on what your deal was. And everybody would have their own deal, and nobody really discussed what money they were making, or, you know, that would be a big bone of contention, I think, with people. You know, if they knew or whatever, because, you know, people always, you know, the guy's got a wife or a girlfriend or something, and the girlfriend's telling him, you're much better than this and that, you're better than this guy, and you're better than that guy, and they're getting all the big money matches, and they're not doing anything with you, and the guys start believing some woman that ain't got nothing to do with wrestling or anything, you know, all the families and things like that. And why would they, you know, believe that? But they, you know, they get the greater feeling of importance, and then they start blaming, you know, other people for their lack of success. And the best thing to do is just put your nose to the grindstone and keep going, because the last thing you can do is go around blaming somebody else for your lack of success, especially in those days when there were places all over the world where you could go. Today, I mean, if some kid says, oh, well, so-and-so didn't like me or whatever, and I've heard, you know, a lot of different kinds of stories or whatever. Somebody didn't like somebody, or who knows what, you know? Exit 5W. Oh, shut up! Beeping the horn at me, for crying out loud. Stick that horn where the sun don't shine. All right. Sorry about that, folks. That must be my aggressive personality. Usually I'm pretty laid back. Yeah, but anyway, so we'd go to a different town every night. And it's like one good example of a week would be leave town, drive about 8 hours, do the town. Then instead of staying over in that town, we'd drive 5 more hours, go to the next town, and then wait and get an early check-in at the hotel. So we could actually get 2 sleeps. We could get 2 sleeps for 1 day pay, you know? Like you're supposed to pay at 6 a.m., but they'd let us pay at 2 or 3 or whatever. And it was a pizza joint that was open all night, so if we had to kill time or whatever, you know. But that was always an interesting thing. And then, of course, after that, you have to drive to the next town. And it pretty much ends up that way. And then you get to like Friday night, you drive all night back to where you started. And then you do a Saturday. And then might get Sunday off sometimes. And then, you know, you do it all again because wrestling was every week or every other week someplace else. And every other week you'd go in and do your television show and your interviews, and you'd have a match on TV. The sad thing is the matches on TV weren't anywhere as good as the matches in the buildings, in the arenas and whatnot. They just weren't, you know. It was a whole nother style. I mean, when I think of how wild we'd get those people trying to butt cigarettes on me, and you know, they got me in a sleeper hold and they want to see if I'm really asleep. That's a good tip for you kids out there. When you get put to sleep, if you get put to sleep in the middle of the ring where the people can't get near you. We didn't have any of those barriers or anything fancy like that, you know. There wasn't any of that. No barriers. People would come right up there and belt you in the head if they could. But the only thing we always knew was the trick was with the fans. You always catch them when they're going through the ropes, because most people have never been in a ring before, you know. And if they had, then they probably know a little bit something about the game, and they're not going to be the one climbing up there to belt you. But if you get them when they're bending over to get into the ropes, you give them a good hard kick in the head, and then they change their mind pretty fast about wanting to get into the wrestling ring. You know, and that was also one of the parts that you had to